Welcome back to the ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel, where we bring you the fastest updates on the hottest, most shocking developments of the beloved soap opera General Hospital. Today, we will explore together a series of absolutely shocking and dramatically intense events revolving around three key characters, Jacinda, Michael, and Carly. Buckle up, because this journey is filled with intense emotions, deep secrets, and a series of critical decisions that could change the lives of many people at General Hospital. When Jacinda and Michael begin to draw closer together, life at General Hospital is always full of unexpected turns and surprises that no one can predict in advance. Jacinda and Michael were once strangers, then gradually found themselves forced by circumstances to cooperate under a mutual agreement. Each wanted to achieve their own personal goals and was willing to join hands with the other side. Previously, there was no romantic feeling whatsoever between them. It was simply a practical handshake for mutual benefit. However, like many stories that have unfolded in the town of Port Charles, when two people face challenges together and share secrets, the distance between them gradually narrows. Jacinda and Michael, through each cooperation, through long nights of mutual understanding, and through moments of intimate sharing, began to recognize a deep empathy. A special connection gradually began to bloom, something neither of them had ever imagined would happen. An unexpected turning point. Real feelings begin to blossom. After a series of shared events, the two had lost the boundaries of themselves. No longer the cold agreement as before, Michael and Jacinda actually let their emotions guide them and unexpectedly ended up in bed together. That moment was not just an explosion of temporary passion, but a permanent turning point in their relationship. From this point on, the following days of Michael and Jacinda become completely different. They no longer avoid each other's gaze, no longer hide their true feelings. A simple hand squeeze, a meaningful glance, and both of them felt a harmonious happiness, something they once thought was impossible. The walls they had built around their hearts slowly crumbled away, revealing vulnerabilities neither had dared to show before. Jacinda discovers she is pregnant. A new chapter opens. Their budding love didn't last long before Jacinda noticed something unusual happening to her body. She felt dizzy, exhausted, and other strange symptoms that Jacinda couldn't ignore. After checking herself, Jacinda was shocked to discover that she was pregnant. Facing this reality, Jacinda's emotions became extremely chaotic, surprised, anxious, yet unable to hide an underlying joy at the possibility of motherhood. Unable to keep such a monumental secret for long, Jacinda decides to meet Michael and tell him everything. That moment truly changes everything. Michael falls silent for several seconds, then suddenly his emotions burst forth. He is both shocked and thrilled, mixed with concern about a future still full of unknowns and uncertainties. The news that he would soon become a father strikes Michael like a powerful awakening, one that fills him with both pride and responsibility. Michael and Jacinda decide to get married, a small family at the threshold. Knowing he would soon become a father, Michael doesn't hesitate for long. He wants to give the very best to Jacinda and their unborn child. Michael takes the initiative and proposes to Jacinda, "I want to marry you. We will create a happy family for our child together." Jacinda is moved by Michael's sincerity and agrees without hesitation. The two begin preparing for their wedding, seemingly writing what should be the perfect ending to their tumultuous journey. Dreams of a warm, cozy family quickly spread throughout General Hospital. Friends and colleagues are all surprised and eagerly anticipate a happy ending for this pair whose romantic path has been filled with fate and destiny. Wedding preparations begin in earnest, and for a brief moment, it seems like nothing in the world could stand in the way of their happiness. Storms approach. Carly vehemently opposes the marriage. However, this happiness doesn't last long. Carly, Michael's mother and a strong-willed woman full of personality in Port Charles, completely disagrees with this hasty decision. From the very beginning, Carly has never really been satisfied with Jacinda, especially when the relationship between Jacinda and her son begins to develop too quickly for her comfort. Carly questions everything. In her view, Jacinda is someone with a murky past and is simply not the right person to be the mother of her grandchild. When she learns that Jacinda is pregnant and claims the baby is Michael's, Carly becomes even more suspicious. She believes the pregnancy might not actually be Michael's child and views the entire situation as a calculated move on Jacinda's part to secure her place in the Corinthos family. Without hesitation, Carly expresses her harsh disapproval. "I will not let you enter this family so easily." Carly's declaration is like a bucket of cold water thrown onto all of Michael and Jacinda's wedding preparations. She adamantly opposes the wedding and puts enormous pressure on Michael to reconsider his choices. Michael caught between two sides, making desperate efforts to convince his mother. Facing his mother's stubbornness, Michael finds himself in an impossible situation. On one side is Jacinda, the woman he truly loves and with whom he is about to have a child. On the other side is Carly, the mother he has always respected, whose position and influence over him are tremendous and deeply rooted. Michael understands that to build lasting happiness, the first step is to gain understanding and acceptance from his mother. He begins trying every possible way to convince Carly, explaining the genuine love he feels for Jacinda, showing his mother the efforts Jacinda has made to change and improve herself over this time. Michael wants to do everything in his power to make Carly understand. "I'm serious, Mom. I want to give this child a complete home, full of love and happiness." But Carly remains stubborn. She raises a series of obstacles, including demanding a DNA test once the child is born to verify absolutely that the blood is Michael's before she will even consider allowing the wedding to take place. Everything becomes tense. The entire household is divided by a war over trust, suspicion, and honor. Family gatherings become uncomfortable. Phone calls are filled with arguments, and the once warm Corinthos home becomes a battlefield of conflicting emotions and ultimatums. The following developments. What destiny is waiting? Facing Carly's determination, both Jacinda and Michael feel exhausted and emotionally drained. Jacinda feels insulted by the constant suspicion, while also fearing for her unborn child's future. However, she is determined to protect her own love and dignity. Jacinda agrees to all of Carly's demands, including the DNA test, to prove herself innocent and trustworthy. Michael never stops comforting Jacinda, while simultaneously continuing to patiently wait for his mother's heart to soften. Each day that passes, the pressure intensifies. But once again, this becomes a test of their love. Late-night conversations between Michael and Jacinda become increasingly intimate as they support each other through the emotional turmoil. Michael reassures Jacinda that no matter what happens, he will stand by her side, even if it means facing his mother's disapproval indefinitely. Viewers will continue to witness a journey full of hardship as Jacinda stands caught between the hammer and anvil of public judgment and Carly's controlling nature. Will the wedding take place as planned? Is the child in Jacinda's womb truly Michael's biological son or daughter? Will Carly eventually accept the couple's love, opening her arms to welcome Jacinda as her official daughter-in-law? The end of one journey or the beginning of a new era? The intense drama between Jacinda, Michael, and Carly may only be the beginning of another series of harsh trials awaiting them ahead. Mother-son bonds, self-respect, mutual trust, and sacrifice are timeless themes that General Hospital has skillfully exploited throughout its legendary run. Jacinda has been and is experiencing emotions more intense than she ever imagined possible, while Michael is forced to grow up and face the most important decisions of his life. The biggest question now, who will give in? Will this small family actually exist within a complex extended family like Port Charles? Will the flame of love between Michael and Jacinda burn bright enough to overcome every obstacle that Carly places in their path? A host of secrets about Jacinda's past, hidden connections surrounding Michael, and the future of the unborn child remain unanswered questions that keep viewers on the edge of their seats every single day. Tune into the next episodes. General Hospital is never boring, no matter what the final outcome turns out to be. One thing is certain: General Hospital will continue to push these three characters into situations never before experienced, full of tears, hope, and breathtaking plot twists. Don't leave the ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel to avoid missing any of the exciting episodes that come next. And there you have it, the complete storm of dramatic developments surrounding the relationships between Jacinda, Michael, and Carly, featuring a controversial wedding, a powerful mother's determination to control her son's choices, and an uncertain future that looms ahead for everyone involved. Next, we will learn about the issue that has every viewer on the edge of their seats: Rocco Falcone's devastating journey through the juvenile detention system, and how one wrongful conviction is reshaping the entire Corinthos Falconeri family dynamic in ways nobody could have predicted. The setup that changed everything. Rocco Falconeri never imagined his good intentions would land him behind bars facing violence and fear that no teenager should ever experience. The whole nightmare began when he made a split-second decision to trust his instincts and help to people he cared about deeply: Joe and Emma. These weren't random acquaintances. They were friends who came to him with evidence of something truly disturbing happening right under everyone's noses at Port Charles University. Professor Dalton's laboratory had become a house of horrors for innocent animals, and someone needed to expose the truth before more creatures suffered. Rocco saw himself as doing the right thing, stepping up when others might have looked away, channeling the same sense of justice his father Dante had always embodied throughout his career in law enforcement. But the path to justice is rarely straightforward, especially in Port Charles, where power players manipulate situations to protect their own interests. When Rocco slipped into that laboratory after hours, his heart was pounding with nervous energy, but his conscience was clear. He wasn't there to vandalize property or cause chaos. He was there to document evidence, to shine a light on cruelty that deserved exposure. Emma and Joe were counting on him, and in his teenage mind, loyalty to friends and protection of the helpless outweighed any potential consequences. What he couldn't have known was that Professor Dalton was already several steps ahead, watching, calculating, and preparing to turn Rocco from witness into scapegoat with devastating precision. The frame job that destroyed his future. Professor Dalton proved to be far more cunning and ruthless than anyone anticipated. Rather than face accountability for the animal cruelty occurring in his lab, he orchestrated a calculated frame job that would make Rocco appear not as a concerned young activist, but as a destructive vandal with malicious intent. The evidence Dalton manufactured was convincing enough to fool prosecutors, judges, and even some members of Rocco's own extended family who initially questioned whether the boy had simply made terrible choices. Equipment was destroyed not by Rocco's hands, but attributed to him nonetheless. Security footage was mysteriously edited or corrupted at convenient moments. Witness statements were coached or coerced to paint a picture of a troubled teenager acting out rather than a principled young man trying to do right. The plea deal that Dante and Alexis had carefully negotiated should have been Rocco's lifeline. It represented months of legal maneuvering, endless phone calls, negotiations with Ada Turner's office, and countless sleepless nights for the entire family. The terms seemed reasonable: community service, probation, mandatory counseling sessions, but absolutely no jail time for a first-time offender whose only real crime was trusting the wrong situation. Dante had explained it to Rocco carefully, making sure his son understood both the gravity of accepting any responsibility and the mercy being extended. Rocco was prepared to accept those terms, to learn from the experience, and to move forward with his life intact. But then the judge intervened with a harshness that stunned everyone in that courtroom. Whether influenced by Dalton's connections, swayed by a particularly damning piece of fabricated evidence, or simply having a particularly strict interpretation of the law that day, the judge rejected the plea arrangement entirely. The gavel came down with a sound that echoed like thunder through Rocco's chest as he heard his sentence: 2 nights in juvenile detention. 2 nights that would forever alter the trajectory of this young man's life. Inside the walls where childhood dies. Juvenile detention facilities are supposed to be rehabilitative environments where young people learn from mistakes and receive guidance back onto the right path. The reality Rocco encountered was something far darker and more primitive. The moment those heavy doors closed behind him, separating him from his family and everything familiar, he entered a world governed by different rules where vulnerability is punished, where kindness is seen as weakness, and where a last name like Corinthos can be either a shield or a target depending on who's doing the calculation. The assault came without warning and without mercy. Rocco was still trying to orient himself to his surroundings, still processing the shock of actually being locked up, when fists connected with his face with brutal force. Whether his attackers knew exactly who he was or simply saw an easy target, a scared kid who clearly didn't belong in that environment, the result was the same. Physical violence that left visible marks on his face and invisible scars on his psyche that would take far longer to heal. What struck viewers most powerfully during the November 24th episode wasn't the violence itself, though that was certainly disturbing enough to watch. It was Rocco's reaction in the aftermath, the way he seemed to physically fold in on himself, making his body smaller, his voice quieter, his presence less noticeable. This is a defensive mechanism that children develop when their environment becomes unpredictable and dangerous. And seeing it manifest in a character viewers have watched grow up since he was a baby felt like watching innocence die in real time. The Rocco who entered that facility was still partly a child, still believed that adults and systems would ultimately protect him. The Rocco who bore those bruises understood a much harsher truth: Dante's heartbreak and helplessness. When Dante Falconeri walked into that visiting area and saw his son's battered face, something fundamental shifted in him. Here was a man who had spent his entire adult life working within the system, believing in law and order, trusting that justice would ultimately prevail if you followed the rules and did everything right. He had raised Rocco with those same values, teaching him to respect authority, to trust in the process, to believe that good people who make honest mistakes will be treated fairly. And now his son sat before him as living proof that sometimes the system fails the people it's supposed to protect. Dante tried desperately to offer strength and reassurance, wrapping Rocco in words of encouragement even as his own heart was breaking. He talked about family rallying around him, mentioned that Danny and Charlotte were mobilizing support, promised that lawyers were working around the clock to fix this injustice. But even as the words left his mouth, Dante could see they weren't landing, not because Rocco didn't believe his father loved him, but because love doesn't stop fists from flying in lockup. Love doesn't make two nights pass any faster when you're terrified of who might come at you next. The fear visible in Rocco's eyes wasn't the theatrical kind often seen in soap opera drama. It was quiet and deep, the kind of fear that burrows into your bones and changes how you see the world. It was the fear of a young person realizing that the adults in his life, no matter how powerful or well-intentioned, cannot always keep him safe. That realization is perhaps more traumatic than the physical assault itself, because it fundamentally alters a child's sense of security in the universe. Sonny's survival lessons from the dark side. Then Sonny Corinthos arrived, and the entire energy of that visiting room transformed. Sonny didn't come with gentle platitudes or false reassurances. He came with hard-earned wisdom from someone who has survived environments far worse than juvenile detention, who understands exactly how power and reputation function in confined spaces where traditional rules don't apply. Sonny looked at his grandson and saw a version of himself from decades ago, a kid caught up in circumstances beyond his control, learning brutal lessons about how the world actually works. Sonny's message was clear and unflinching. Survival in a place like this isn't about being the nicest person or the most innocent. It's about establishing that you cannot be touched without consequences, that your name carries weight, that attacking you means bringing down problems bigger than any temporary satisfaction gained from landing a punch. He wanted Rocco to understand that being a Corinthos isn't just a family label, it's armor, it's protection, it's a warning to anyone who might consider him easy prey. Whether viewers find Sonny's approach admirable or troubling largely depends on their own worldview, but there's no denying the effect it had on Rocco. For the first time since entering detention, something hardened in the boy's expression. The victim mentality began to recede, replaced by something more determined, more aware, more strategic. Sonny wasn't teaching him to become violent or cruel. He was teaching him to project strength even when feeling afraid, to use his family connections as the protective shield they can be, to survive this experience without letting it completely break him. The adults who failed him are finally waking up. While Rocco struggles to survive each hour inside those walls, the adults responsible for putting him there are slowly beginning to comprehend the magnitude of their mistake. Ada Turner, who initially pursued the case with confidence in the evidence presented, is now experiencing serious doubts about the narrative she helped construct. Inconsistencies in Professor Dalton's statements are becoming harder to ignore. Evidence that once seemed solid is revealing cracks under closer scrutiny. And most damningly, Professor Dalton himself has mysteriously vanished just when questions about his conduct were intensifying. Nathan's inability to locate the professor speaks volumes about guilt and consciousness of wrongdoing. Innocent people don't typically disappear precisely when their stories are being challenged and their victims are suffering consequences. Dalton's absence is practically a confession, yet it doesn't undo the damage already inflicted on Rocco. It doesn't erase the trauma or heal the bruises or give back the innocence that's been stripped away. Dante is pushing harder than ever against bureaucracy and red tape, calling in every favor, pressuring every contact, demanding that someone acknowledge this miscarriage of justice and take immediate action to rectify it. But the legal system moves slowly even in emergencies, and for Rocco experiencing violence and fear, every hour feels like an eternity. The gap between when the adults realize the truth and when that truth translates into Rocco's freedom represents a chasm filled with potential trauma that will shape who this young man becomes. The crossroads that defines a character's soul. General Hospital has a long history of using singular traumatic events as defining moments that fundamentally alter a character's trajectory and establish their core identity for years to come. Michael Corinthos was shaped by watching his stepfather A.J. die and dealing with the aftermath. Spencer Casadini was forged in the fires of his father's crimes and his own time in juvenile facilities. Even Dante's character was defined by discovering his true parentage and reconciling his law enforcement ideals with Corinthos' family reality. Now Rocco stands at his own crossroads, and the direction he chooses in these crucial moments will determine not just his immediate future, but potentially decades of storyline development. The bruises on his face are temporary and will fade within weeks, but the psychological impact of feeling abandoned by systems that should protect him, of experiencing violence while society watches, of learning that justice sometimes fails the innocent, those scars can last a lifetime and reshape personality in profound ways. The question facing Rocco isn't whether he'll eventually get out of detention. Of course he will. The combined resources of the Corinthos, Falconeri, and Spencer families virtually guarantee that lawyers will eventually untangle this mess and secure his release. The real question, the one that will define his character for potentially the next decade of General Hospital storytelling, is who he'll be when those doors finally open and he walks back into freedom. Will he emerge more like Dante, still believing in justice and systems despite their failures, committed to reforming rather than rejecting? Or will he emerge more like Sonny, understanding that real power exists outside official channels, that reputation and fear sometimes protect better than laws and lawyers? Perhaps he'll forge a third path entirely, becoming something new that General Hospital hasn't yet explored. But one thing is absolutely certain. The Rocco who exits juvenile detention will not be the same innocent teenager who entered, and whose voice ultimately resonates most strongly in his head during these formative moments. Danny's idealism or Sonny's pragmatism will shape the man he becomes and the stories he'll inhabit for years to come.